Thank you. As Ken said, Blake Miller. I have been with Salesforce for 5 years and was a customer of both Salesforce and ExactTarget before joining 5 years ago. Rachel's been with ExactTarget and Salesforce for 7 years now. So some of the product side in the customer marketing, customer care side as well. So really excited to walk you through some trends from a digital survey that we did of the state of marketing. So we interviewed 4,000 marketers earlier this year. And we released a lot of surveys to benchmark the industry and see where everything is. And we really talked about kind of the past. And we really are seeing an evolution in marketing. We talk about the past of the old marketing roles where everything was campaign-focused, really metrics-driven, but metrics-driven at a goal of how can I drive opens, clicks, conversions, really operating in silos. And now we see the future of marketing is moving across all of our customer expectations across the customer lifecycle. Because we all understand as consumers, we do business with brands, not individual departments. I think the only time that I actually think about doing business with a department is when I go in to get my car serviced. Because actually I'm going to the service department. But the rest of the time we think about I do business or I'm a customer of that organization or that brand. And as marketers, we have to control that experience and think about that entire customer lifecycle. So the survey that we did was over 4,000 marketers for both B2B and B2C, and it was around the world. So we released this research earlier in 2018, and it really was a survey that was done by an outside research organization, so they didn't know that it was Salesforce conducting that research. And last year, in our State of the Connected Customer report, we really see that customers and brands are competing on customer experience. So when we think about that, understanding that as customers, 80% of consumers are willing to spend money or go somewhere else or pay more because the product and service is just as important as that experience. So it really is about experience as much as it is the product that we're selling or the service that we're selling and get them engagement from. And as customers look at really kind of creating those expectations, about half the brands are beginning to think about that entire customer experience and really pull that forward as those high-performing brands that are setting the standards. And it really is kind of the top challenge is really the top priority. So marketers are interacting with customers in real time. It's a huge challenge for organizations because as consumers, we expect it, right? We talked earlier about getting that notification, getting that email, getting that pop-up ad for 20% off of something we just purchased. And that's not a good consumer experience, and customers expect this, have that new level of expectation, that empowered, so in the right time. Getting that right kind of return, that right mix of the spend, modernizing those tools and technology, and then creating that single view of the customer. We've talked a lot about data today. And that's hard because we do need to create that single view of the customer, but we need to connect that by connecting all of these different sources of data that we have coming together. And it's also our top challenge. Real time becomes a challenge. Data continues to be a challenge, and then budgetary constraints. So creating that single view of the customer, not only across devices, but also across sales, service, marketing, and commerce. So as we think about that, really the four big things that came out of this. Number one, marketing becomes that cross-channel functional glue of the experiences, so that connecting across the organization. And you think about this has really always kind of been true as marketers, because as marketers and as advertising, we were the face of the brand. We were really the first interaction that a customer may have with us, and we protected the customer and that relationship and the brand in our consumers' eyes throughout that life cycle, and hopefully turning them into advocates as we have a great customer experience. So as we think about, this is really interesting that we see that 62% of individual marketers are saying, hey, we're doing better than we were before. So we're improving on that experience, so kind of thinking holistically across the organization. But when we look, only half are there. We actually 45% are there. So we really think about how those two kind of relate together. As brands, we know we have to connect those experiences, but we're not there yet. So we really think about we're getting better, but we're still only a third of the way or 40% of the way of where we want to go. So we really think about how we do that. How do leaders connect all of those consistent goals and metrics across the organization? So again, the other challenge of integrating technology stacks becomes the leading organizations are doing this. And I think this is some great progress that we see in this research and that we track this trend year over year. So we're starting to see integrated stacks. So really starting with marketing and advertising talking together. That's a great first step. It's a great first step to have those common elements so we can leverage all of our great first-party data that as email marketers we have. And being able to leverage that to connect that together. And then really as we kind of evolve, it's taking that next step. How do we have those common goals and metrics? I think it was really great today when Heather talked about we look at opens and clicks, but it's really about more than that. If we're talking about leads and conversions and revenue, we need to focus on those metrics, not necessarily some of the lower funnel, or it could paint a picture that's not really true to the goals that we're trying to drive as an organization. And we look about this kind of really starting to work across teams. I'm surprised this is kind of only around 50% that some of these teams are working together. I think there's a lot of progress to go, a lot of opportunity in this area as well. And there's a huge opportunity when we look at connecting customer service. And the reason there's a huge opportunity for marketers and customer service to work together is because, again, our current customers we're known. We have a lot of information. We know the products. We know the services. We know everything they bought. A lot of times we can even know the history with our brand. And as marketers, we need to leverage that and have those intelligent conversations with our customers and prospects. So really this is something where high-performing organizations are really starting to increase that functionality. And 21% are starting, we've seen a 21% increase in the companies that are beginning to suppress messages for customer with open cases. So really thinking about how we leverage that together. So if you're having a customer service issue, maybe it's not the best time to kind of upsell them or provide them more promotional. Maybe we should have those kind of individual call-outs from customer service reps to connect them across that entire customer lifecycle. So next we really look at kind of unifying that data. And again, this is really how we deliver. We put the customer at the center of everything that we do. But to leverage that and really pull that into action, we need to unify all that data. This is surprising. This is really interesting that the number of data sources from our research, it is actually going to increase on average by 3 more data sources in the coming year. So how many people have at least 15 data sources? 12? Less than 10? How many don't know? So we really look at the marketers are really pulling all this together, so it becomes akin that battle of integration, creating that single view of the customer. So where is everybody storing their data? I'm glad you asked. So we have a lot of it stored in marketing databases. This is based on the 4,000 customer researchers. The CRM, email service providers, I think we see that really blending and seeing the leverage and the value of all of that rich first-party data because, as we all know, with every email interaction we have with a customer, we gain another set of data. We gain another data point. They may not like our content, but that gives us more data to go back and make it better. They may love our content, and so we're going to double down on that. But every one of those interactions gives us more data and insight about our customers, and then moving into some of the other platforms, and there's still a large percentage that are moving and leveraging all their data with those homegrown systems. So with that, I will hand over to Rachel to talk about how we're really leveraging artificial intelligence.
Thanks, Blake. Thank you. So as Blake was just talking about, we are looking at this massive number of data sources, right? 15 is a good amount. And that's a lot of data to take in. It's a lot of data to make sense of. It's a lot of data to pull together. And it's a lot of data to use in an effective way. But the great news is that there's been a lot of advancements in AI and machine learning and deep learning as we're getting to the different levels of what AI is overall. That's making it a little bit easier, and that's helping marketers, helping us as marketers grapple with all these different data sources and actually make sense of it all. But when we talk about AI, it's such a big term. I think when we saw some of the survey responses coming into today and one of the trends that's standing out, and somebody had called out that AI needs a little bit more context and explanation around it. And it's a big term, and so it's something that we've been talking about a ton. And when I think about it personally, I think about it in two different ways, right? I think about it actually as a recipient of AI. What's happening in my day-to-day life that I'm experiencing that's impacted by AI? And how many times we're actually interacting with it and we're not even paying attention to it or really realizing it. From that moment when we're asking Siri, what's the weather today, or what's on my calendar today, or hey Google, what's on my calendar, to the moments where I'm tapping through an Instagram story or I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and I'm getting those really targeted promotional posts. And that promotional post becomes really interesting. We have a colleague that he's really focused on social, and when he would speak, he would actually encourage people at the table to take out their phone, pull up their Facebook or their Instagram, and pass it to the person next to them. And thinking about what a jarring experience that is, because your feed is pretty personal, and that's that moment when you realize that everything in your feed is unique to you. And for me, I noticed that especially when my husband was showing me something on his Instagram feed, and as he was scrolling through, I was realizing, oh, his ads are way different than mine. He's not getting beauty and fashion products next to his friends' photos. He's seeing movies and games and all these other things. And just recognizing what a personal space that is and how AI is really impacting a lot of those areas. The other piece of AI that I like to think about as a marketer is how it's helping us as marketers and make sense of data and help us grapple with those different sources and becoming just another toolkit that we can use. And we're seeing some major adoption here, right? So we're seeing marketers are increasing their likelihood of using it over the next year. And what's really interesting, though, is that we're seeing those high performers adopt it at an even quicker pace. So with high performers saying that 40% of them are actually using AI today. And they're 3 times more likely than those, almost 3 times more likely than those underperformers. But what types of AI are they actually using, right? So like, what are those individual elements, or what are the different types? So right now, marketers are on average using about around two different types of AI, but they plan to move into 4 in the next year, so doubling it by 2020. So some of those different types that we like to think about are a lot of the conversations that we've heard today around personalization, real-time, next best offer types of capabilities, but then also going into these other channels. So where we're thinking about improving the web experience, talking about offline versus online, so going omni-channel, and looking at things like social and messaging apps, so maybe even chatbots going in that direction. So there's all these different types, but overall just seeing some massive growth. And for every brand, maybe one of these stands out a little bit more, is more relevant to the other, but there's a lot of different places that it can go. And all of that is extremely exciting, but it's only helpful when it's actually helping the customer, and it's only helpful when it's paying attention to what the customer's needs are, and customers are demanding that their privacy be recognized. And where we're seeing high performers really take this to heart, where they're 7 times more likely to feel confident that they can rectify this difference between privacy and the level of personalization that they're providing. But then it's going into this space where brands are actually going even further, and they're going beyond what we're hearing, things like when GDPR is coming out or the California Consumer Privacy Act coming out. And those are great starting points, but the brands that are going above and beyond are, one, future-proofing, but then they're also making sure they're exceeding those customer expectations in those spaces. And customer expectations around privacy are also things like creepy versus clever. And so one of the top sessions that Blake and I were just looking at together recently was, the title is Creepy versus Clever and the Thoughtful Usage of Personalization, and how in high demand that type of topic is today. So now that we have AI helping us with grappling with all these different data sources, AI is also impacting the way that customers are expecting to engage with brands. So the fact that we can talk to Siri and get the information that we need, or that we can get the right type of product recommendation when we need it, those are the expectations that are starting to build. And thinking of all those interactions that we have as individuals with these different types of brands and all these different tech companies and beyond, that they're starting to change what we even expect from everyday brands and just brands that we're using throughout our days. And so today, customers, out of one of our connected customer report, customers actually said that they're engaging with brands in up to 10 different channels. And so I was thinking about a recent interaction I had, actually the shoes that I'm wearing. I went to DSW, but my path to get there was I received a direct mail piece. And then that direct mail piece took me to wanting to go in store. Well, on my way to the store, I started looking through my email because I had left the coupon at home. And once I was on the bus on my way to the store, I realized, I can open it up on the app. And so just in those channels, just in that short interaction, I was going through 4 different channels and then also going in store and speaking with the staff there. And so just seeing how you start to interweave between all these different channels. Where in most cases, the website is what we're seeing in most digital interactions as being that starting point. It's kind of that main platform for the brand. But then there's all these other channels that are supporting the brand message overall. And as I think Veronica did a great job showing with DraftKings how different channels work for different elements or different phases of that life cycle, and looking at what that means for your individual brand. And in this case, throughout the survey, just taking a general look at which channels are the most effective in supporting the website and supporting the customer experience in those different phases. Where, not surprising, we see email showing up in 4 out of 6 of those, so 2/3 of them. And email really helping out in that loyalty space, that retention space, and also that re-engagement and upselling space. And then social coming in and really helping out with that brand building and lead generation being that other really common channel. And on top of all of this, with the channels and looking at the different the customer expectations around privacy, and the other types of trends that marketers are trying to keep up with, and the other one is looking at trends within the inbox and these email design trends that are coming out. And so 2 out of the past 3 years, interactivity in the email or interactive email has been within the top 2. So it was the top feature in the past couple of years, but it was just outplaced by personalization and dynamic content in this most recent survey. So just seeing these trends of interactivity and personalization, putting these demands on marketers of the trends that we need to keep up with. And then last but not least, closing it out on what we look at the end of the day are those KPIs, and that's a trend that marketers are continuing to evolve to meet. And I think Heather did a great job talking about, and Blake had brought it up again too, about we're now moving beyond just those engagement rates, the click and the open rate, and starting to look at things like pipeline, satisfaction, LCV. I think John talked about share of bag for golf clubs. And so what is that unique metric for your brand, and also how are you answering these for your customers? So there's a lot more research out there. There's a few different reports if you want to dive deeper. So going into the connected customer, the state of the marketing, which we just spoke through a little bit, digital advertising and beyond. And then lastly, we'll be at Connections next week. So I talked to some of you. We'll see you there. If you're going to be there, let us know. We can try to connect when we're there next week. And if you haven't yet, consider going. It should be really exciting. Gwen Stefani's going to be there. And thank you.
Thanks, guys. You've improved the setting so much just by being here. We always get a nice tall glass of Blake, but it's just nice to have a different face in the mix. So thank you very much.
Thanks. I feel fortunate to share the limelight with Blake. So.
There you go. So any questions for these guys? I know we have a lot to do. We have a question back here. We have a lot to do today, but let's get to the bottom of this. Let me, in fact, pick it up. Let us know who you are, where you're from.
Sure. Hi, I'm Stacy with Yes Marketing.
Yes.
In the context of your remarks, how would you define or differentiate AI versus machine learning?
So that becomes kind of what, when we look at the artificial intelligence and machine learning, I think that we do have the crossover, and it does become that bucket where it becomes artificial intelligence, and they use that to mean everything from product recommendations that have been around for a while into kind of the deep learning where it's machines getting smarter and kind of learning over time. So we're really looking at the data recommendations are where I can build the data model off of the artificial intelligence, and then the other ones were the machine learning, where you're starting to take with like image recognition or other things, and those machines are starting to learn the patterns and get that train over time, versus artificial intelligence where somebody built that the algorithms and the rules to make those smarter decisions, whether it's product recommendations or people who like bought this, also bought that. So as we dive into that and looking at machine learning, where the computer's going to start to teach itself, pick up on those patterns and start to do recognition. We look at, like when you're doing recognition for, we talked about like sports logos. Like it's going to see a lot of different versions of those logos over time, and it's going to start to train itself and get smarter about those recommendations. So that's going to be kind of the other end of the spectrum versus, we've all come into kind of contact with the people who bought this, also bought that for those product recommendations, which have been kind of the stuff that we've interacted for a long time.
Okay. Anyone else? So you guys are here for a little while, right?
Yep.
We'll have you today and tomorrow as well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. So if you have more questions for the Salesforce team,